Who's bad? It's ChinnyVision. Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja, for which I will onwards refer to it as just Dragon Ninja, is a 1988 game by Namco and released by Data East as well. Bit confusing, one of those ones where you've got lots of different companies involved in it. It's a bit like Green Beret, and we'll see. You are the bad dudes, and you have to rescue the president. President Ronnie. It's 1988. Actually, didn't George Bush come in 88? Anyway, you're a bad dude to rescue Ronnie. You run along in the arcade and punch people and shoot them and pick up weapons. It is a generic Russian attack game, I suppose. Bit of sampled speech, large moving sprites. It's all very generic. And it was licensed by Ocean and put out on the Imagine label. Starting off with the Amstrad CPC version I had, as always things are. And I got this on budget for $3.99. You will have seen a message there that flashed past very briefly saying 128K detected, loading all the levels at once and loading sampled speech. Yes, if you've got 128K on the Amstrad, there's no multi-load. And in common with games like Chase HQ, you also get speech as well. Jonathan Dunn doing the music. Off we go. And there you are as the bad dude. Now, unlike the arcade, on the 8-bits, you can't play two-player. You can kick and attack your enemies. And you can also pick up weapons. Graphically, it's looking very similar to RoboCop on the CPC. I haven't checked this, but I assume the graphics guy is probably the same person. Same size of screen. I imagine Ocean had an engine. Huge scrolling, not sprites, but lorries going past you, and when you die you get an ah noise. But you can see why they've shrunk the screen down a bit on the CPC here, because you're going to get quite a lot of large graphics moving around. You can pick up weapons. I've got a knife, and when you got the knife it really does become like Green Beret. And we're already through to the end of level baddie. But first let's go over to the Spectrum version. Loading screen by Mark R. Jones. And you'll notice it's different to the CPC version. The Spectrum version done by Mark is an authentic copy of the game artwork. The CPC version is a Bruce Lee rip-off, and it was done in the same office, according to Mark, and he surprised the CPC artist got away with the Bruce Lee rip-off. Although it does look quite cool. Now, it's similar in some ways. In the same way RoboCop on the Spectrum is similar to RoboCop on the CPC, but they've used mode 0 on the Amstrad. It looks similar but monochromatic. Same size, shrunken down screen. And the MSX version, we're going to look at this briefly. It's one of those converted in a couple of days Spanish conversions. So yeah, it's the Spectrum version, and it's slower, and it's a game that's been converted in a couple of days by a few blokes in Spain for probably 500 quid. Or 500%, how much was 500 pesetas worth? Can't remember. Seems such a long time ago. C64, Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja. So we get some music, finally, when we're playing. It's all very colourful and fast. There's one thing about the C64 version that you'll come and notice. It doesn't continuously scroll along like the CPC version does, and the Spectrum version does, where you can just walk to the end of the level. You have to clear a certain amount of baddies before it will let you scroll on anymore. Each baddie has its own method of attack. In practice, this makes no difference at all to how you play it, because it's just hit the enemies as fast as you can. It probably has more bearing in the arcade version. Across to the Atari St. And if you didn't guess if this was a cracked version or not, Automation and Automation have already said this is a really bad game. Perhaps that's a reference to just it being bad dudes. And again, it's a hacked version. President Vapor has been kidnapped by the Pompey Pirates. Local heroes around here. Let's get him. And we get some jangly music on the ST. And it's slow. It's so slow. It's incredibly slow. It's a bit like wading through treacle. And yes, it does slow down when there's more on the screen, which is helpful. This was released in 1990 by Ocean and got somewhat overshadowed by the other releases that year and around that time. Cross to the Amiga. Now, I'm confused because my version doesn't have music, but versions I've seen online do. So I don't know what's going on there. And some people have complained about other people reviewing the game and having no music. I don't know what's going on. It's a bit faster. Now, the Amiga version is a bit faster than the ST. I am running this on an accelerated Amiga 1200. Cue the complaints. But the Amiga version genuinely is actually a bit faster than the ST. Music does start when you reach the end of level baddie. Who's this big muscles bloke who breathes fire? And the plinky plonk music on the ST sounds quite Japanese. It sounds very MSX, in fact. It's that kind of music you get on some Konami games, isn't it? On the 64, you do realise how small the sprites are on the 64, and on the Spectrum there's a nice differential at least between you and the enemy size. He's just that little bit bigger than you. Cleared him, and MSX, well, it's the same. On the CPC, however, you do get a little bit of sampled speech. And across to level 2. And you are on top of a moving lorry. Or is it a train? I think it's a lorry. I'm not sure. Anyway, you've got to run along and stab the enemies, shoot the enemies, what have you. And if you don't move fast enough, you just get pushed along the screen, basically. And you have to jump between the containers. Take note, jump over or between the containers. And baddies are crawling up the sides. This is quite unique for an 8-bit game. You fall on the ground and get pushed backwards. This was quite remarkable the first time I saw it, because I couldn't think of another game that I'd seen at that time on the Amstrad where you did this kind of thing. Faster on the Spectrum. And you notice the graphical differences. They haven't ported the Spectrum graphics to the Amstrad. They are completely different. The underlying code is probably shared, but no more than that. Across the 64, and again, a lovely large lorry graphic. It is a lorry. It's like the end to an action film, or Living Daylights. Well, that's more driving these kind of trucks. Big rigs were a thing in the late 80s. Down we go. I'm coming down a bit too early, so I'm getting pushed back. And the lorry will come to a sudden stop because it can't do anything other than drive. There you go. Flash the screen, it goes static. And the enemy's really small. The enemy is really, really small with big claw hands. End of level on the Amiga. And those samples really get on your nerves. Doing my special move with the flaming arms. Here he comes. Is it Paul Gannon in a suit with big fingers? And the annoying jangly music is back on the Atari ST version. Can I say I'm having no fun at all on these 16-bit versions? Now, over to the Amstrad. And nice sampled speech there again. No fun with those 16-bit versions. There's a major jumping problem on both of them, which we'll come to. Across the specky, nice moving water effect down the bottom. The game is quite into equality. You get female baddies and male baddies as well. Although the ninjas could in fact be female, you might not be able to see they're female. You can't climb up those ladders. You have to jump everywhere. And at least the jumping on the 8-bit systems actually works. Ended level 3 on the ST with this baddie that multiplies. All these versions trying to be faithful as they can be to the arcade, but on these 16-bit versions, it just doesn't feel right. And some people I've discussed this with online say they like this game and like this game at the time. I can't see it. I just can't see it. I'm not having any fun at all. I mean, beat-em-up games by their very nature are very repetitive. But this is one that is just boring and slow, especially on the ST. This is the Super Wonder Boy level. And it does scroll up and down on this level as well. So I get a little bit of variety there. Crash gave this game 46% on the Spectrum. ChinnyVision gave it 69% on the CPC. And Ace, with their bizarre scoring systems, gave it 860 on the C64, 856 on the CPC, and 792 on the Spectrum. Amiga Power gave this game 4%. I'd argue deservedly. I know that was another bone of contention online as well, because people said, oh well, Amiga Power got it wrong. Whereas Amiga Power was the only magazine that actually spotted the major flaw in the 16-bit versions of this game, in that the jumping is fatally broken. Power-ups on the CPC and the 8-bit versions in general are quite easy to pick up. On the 16-bit versions, and on the specky version here, they're not. Specky version, curiously, on this level scrolls to the right. On the other versions, it's all to the left. I can't jump. Can you see what's happening here? I cannot jump across that level to that next platform. And this is a problem that Stuart Campbell picked up in an Amiga Power, and when he gave the game such a low score. A few months later, Amiga Power had to correct it because somebody from Ocean showed them how to jump. But apparently it was so complex, Amiga Power only stuck 10% on the score. It's ludicrously hard to jump right-left. And apparently some versions are bug fixed. ST version is so down to a crawl. This is like wading through treacle. Particularly painful, bad, lazily coded treacle that is full of bugs. Look at it go! This is a frame rate to behold. CPC version, this is the version I'm having the most fun on. It's boring, it's repetitive. But you get the weapons, it becomes a little bit more fun. It moves along at a fair old rate, so nice and colourful. Back to the C64. And again, this version on this level is moving along quite well. Approaching the end of the game now, level 7 I think this is. and you face a number of the end of level baddies one after the other before you meet the big end of game baddie. Now, I've only got this far on the CPC and the Amiga versions via cheating. There's your big man again. And he's like that thing from RoboCop, but bigger. And this is the end of the game. A Jet Ranger helicopter comes down. And look who's inside. Why, if it isn't President Ronnie? Congratulations, I am free. Let's go for an hamburger. An hamburger. And look, he looks sad at the end. On the CPC, you do get the big helicopter, although it just scrolls left to right. But even so, big sprite moving around and a baddie the same size as you. But it's still impressive. And there we go. We've defeated him. And I'm bad. And everything animates back and forth. Mr. President says, "Hey, bad dude, thanks for rescuing me. Let's go for a hamburger." Congratulations, CPC coders can actually use grammar. The game does have a 2-player mode available on the ST and Amiga. It's, yeah, I mean, you might get a bit more fun out the game. Bad Dudes versus Dragon Ninja. Well, it's a turn of the 8-bits and the 16-bits. On the 16-bits, this game is absolute, total and utter rubbish. I don't care how good your memories are of this game. It's tripe. The ST version is way, way too slow, and the jumping, even on the bug fix versions, is too frustrating. How did any of the reviewers other than Amiga Power not spot this? Were they lazy? Did they only play level 1? I suspect so, because the only way I could get to the end of the levels that required jumping was to basically use a cheat, fall off the trucks, and then respawn at the top of the trucks. Absolute, total and utter rubbish. So many better games you could be playing, and yeah, it's just bad. 8-bit versions. For me, the CPC version just about edges it. It's colourful, it's faithful, it's still a little bit boring, but it's not too bad at all, and there's lots of power-ups to pick up to help you power your way through the game. Spectrum version is monochromatic, but a little bit faster. Doesn't have that visual appeal of the CPC version. MSX version is a complete and utter waste of time. In fact, the problem was I couldn't even get out the end of level 1 with the image I downloaded, because when the multi-load tried to load level 2, it just threw me back to level 1. But these games were ported in a weekend. You can only expect a really slow, straight port. C64 version is pretty good. Got a banging tune as you play, and lots of colour, and it's fast, but I don't like the way the screen holds you up. If you don't clear the baddies, the screen won't scroll onwards, and some of those sprites are just a little bit too small. Bad Dudes vs Dragon Ninja was an unremarkable arcade game, and I'm afraid it varies for the home systems from a terrible home port to an unremarkable home port, although that sample speech on the CPC is pretty neat.